Of course. Here's Section 1 according to your instructions. Clear narrative. Focus on main characters and central conflict. No headings. Under 1,000 words. The morning sky above Tokyo was unusually crisp, the pale sun glinting off glass towers as millions moved through their routines, unaware of the unseen shadows creeping closer. Ethan Ward, a senior analyst at the Global Space Observation Agency, leaned closer to his monitor, frowning at the erratic readings streaming across the screen. They had appeared 2 hours ago, unprecedented energy fluctuations far beyond the moon's orbit. He wiped his forehead and tapped the emergency call key. Within minutes, alarms blared through the corridors. In Washington, D.C., President Elena Morgan watched in grim silence as military advisors filled the Situation Room. General Hastings slammed a satellite photo onto the table. "Madam President," he said, his voice tight, "this isn't a meteor shower. It's a fleet. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of colossal ships dark against the cold blackness of space, moving with deliberate, terrifying precision toward Earth. Around the world, news networks scramble for footage. Grainy images leaked online, angular vessels the size of cities, each bristling with strange glowing structures. Panic crackled through social media, spread across television screens, flooded the streets. Flights were grounded. Markets crashed. Citizens fled cities in frantic waves, filling highways until they became parking lots stretching to the horizons. But it was a silence that chilled Ethan the most. They weren't broadcasting messages, no warnings, no ultimatums. They simply came. In a hidden bunker below the Swiss Alps, Dr. Sanam Malik adjusted her glasses and studied the alien movement patterns. Unlike anything human tacticians would design, their formations were fluid, alive, as if directed by instinct more than strategy. "They're not here to talk," she whispered. "They're here to conquer." Governments issued emergency broadcasts, urging calm. But calm evaporated when the first ship entered the atmosphere over the Atlantic Ocean, its surface gleaming like a giant obsidian dagger. Clouds boiled around it, oceans churned violently beneath. Then came the message, a soundless pulse transmitted directly into every device on Earth. A single sentence: surrender or face extinction. President Morgan sat frozen as the words scrolled across every monitor. Around her, staffers argued, shouted, begged for decisions. But Morgan knew hesitation could doom them all. She ordered immediate mobilization of global defenses. Every country, every ally, every soldier. Tell them to prepare. In the sky above Brazil, the second ship descended, followed by a third over Cairo. Blue beams, silent and searing, sliced through military satellites, disabling Earth's eyes in space. Communications blacked out. Fear turned to terror. Ethan raced through the darkened corridors of the agency, reaching the restricted servers. He knew Earth's weaponry was laughable against such technological superiority. Yet he also knew something others didn't. Buried deep in experimental files was a potential countermeasure. Not a weapon, but an anomaly. A signal they had once detected, years ago, an anomaly that had made alien drones retreat without reason during earlier deep space missions. But he needed access, and the firewalls were coming down as cyber attacks rained from orbit. Meanwhile, in a resistance meeting in Johannesburg, Kira Mbeki, a former peacekeeper turned freedom fighter, gathered a ragged band of engineers, soldiers, and hackers. Unlike the politicians, Kira didn't believe survival depended on negotiation. She believed it depended on Earth's unpredictability, humanity's desperate ingenuity. "We fight with what we have," she told them. "And what we have," she smiled grimly, "is the madness they'll never understand." The first shots were fired over the Pacific Rim. Fighter jets rose in desperate formations, missiles streaking toward the invaders. They barely scratched the shimmering barriers surrounding the alien ships. In retaliation, the sky erupted in blue fire. Whole fleets vanished in silent flashes of light. Across burning cities, people looked upward, some in horror, others in defiance. Churches filled, militias formed. Scientists sent desperate messages into the void, offering surrender, pleading for talks. The aliens remained silent. Only their inexorable advance continued, slow, relentless, methodical. In a ruined command center in San Francisco, Ethan finally cracked a secured archive, his fingers trembling. The file was incomplete, fragmented, but enough. A pulse frequency, a resonance pattern. Not an attack, but something else. A disruption? A signal they feared? His screen flickered, a low hum building in the air. He looked up and saw the sky tearing open, clouds boiling with alien fire. In the distance, an alien dreadnought descended toward the city, its massive engine scorching the earth below. Ethan transmitted the frequency to a secure line, the last secure line he could find. Pray it would reach anyone who could use it. Then he ran, as fire rained from the heavens and humanity's future hung by a thread. Somewhere deep beneath the crumbling surface of the world, an idea was born, an idea the invaders had not anticipated, and it was about to change everything. Of course. Here's Section 2, matching your requested style. Clear narrative, advancing the plot, deepening characters, no extra elements, under 1,000 words. Smoke curled over shattered skylines as a bruised earth rallied its remaining strength. President Morgan stood before a battered round table in the Colorado Command Shelter, her face pale under the flickering emergency lights. Around her, generals, scientists, and surviving diplomats listened grimly as General Hastings outlined the only plan they had left. "We can't outgun them," he said, his voice raw. "But we believe, with synchronized attacks on their command ships, we can disorient their fleet. By time to launch a countermeasure." Morgan's gaze swept the room. Too many faces missing. Too few resources left. Yet the fire had not gone out. "We strike together," she said, voice steel with finality. "Every nation, every fighter, every hour matters." Across the Atlantic, aboard the last operational carrier, Captain Arya Solano reviewed her squadrons. Veteran pilots and fresh-faced volunteers alike, their eyes betrayed a terrible knowledge. They were unlikely to return. Solano strapped in without hesitation. She had survived more battles than she could count, but this was different. This was survival itself. In an underground lab outside Nairobi, Dr. Sanam Malik fine-tuned the crude prototype based on Ethan's signal discovery. She moved with desperate precision, modifying old communication arrays to amplify the resonance frequency. Around her, exhausted technicians soldered circuits and rewired systems, hands trembling. If the prototype failed, there would be no second attempt. Meanwhile, Kira and Becky's resistance cells sprang into action. They knew conventional weapons were nearly useless, so they adapted, hijacked alien tech from crashed scout ships, retrofitted drones, repurposed civilian satellites. In abandoned malls and broken subways, humans turned every scrap of metal and wire into weapons of sabotage. As the clock struck midnight in Greenwich Mean Time, the Earth struck back. Solano's fighter wing rose like a swarm of fireflies into the bleeding sky. Lasers and missiles streaked upward, a brilliant but doomed light show against the alien behemoths. Across continents, ground units launched coordinated barges. Entire cities became battlefields. Streets transformed into desperate kill zones. At first, it seemed hopeless. The alien ships absorbed Earth's firepower without faltering. Their defenses shimmered against incoming ordnance like water over stone. In retaliation, blue lances of light descended, tearing through concrete and steel, vaporizing battalions in heartbeats. Ethan watched helplessly from an emergency outpost as the global communications grid collapsed city by city. News feeds stuttered into silence. Panic gripped the survivors. But in the lab, Sanaa's hands moved faster. The prototype was ready, fragile, untested, but ready. On a cracked rooftop overlooking a burning Johannesburg, Kira and her team prepared their hacked alien disruptor. She breathed in the acrid smoke, feeling it sear her lungs, and gave the signal. They launched the makeshift weapon toward the nearest cruiser. The device exploded in a burst of electromagnetic static. For a moment, the cruiser shuddered, just a fraction, but it was enough to catch their attention. The aliens, for the first time, adjusted. They reoriented, tightening their formations, focusing more methodically on key resistance hubs. They were learning, adapting. Solano's squadron, dwindling in number, broke through an opening in the alien defenses near the Pacific Rim. With no margin for error, Solano guided her bomber toward the suspected command ship, engines roaring at their limits. The clouds burned crimson around her as plasma blasts lanced past. Alarms shrieked in her ears. She locked the payload. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, the command ship's shield shimmer cracked, and a tremor rippled through the alien fleet. Across battlefields worldwide, their movements faltered, not by much, but enough for Sanaa to upload the signal. Ethan, watching the feed, dared to hope as the resonance frequency rippled outward from hidden transmitters around the globe. The first effects were subtle. Alien drones stuttered in midair. Smaller craft spiraled uncontrollably. Resistance fighters cheered as a few ships crashed, flaming into oceans and forests. But victory was fleeting. The alien motherships adapted faster than expected. They deployed new countermeasures, sealing their command ships in layers of impenetrable energy fields. Earth's forces, exhausted and bleeding, had delivered a wound, but not a mortal one. As dawn broke over a scarred and smoldering Earth, President Morgan stood before her surviving command. Casualty reports flooded in, millions dead, cities razed, ecosystems poisoned. She bowed her head for a long, heavy moment, then straightened. "We hurt them," she said. "We can do it again." Across the world, among broken skyscrapers and cratered battlefields, humanity's battered remnants stirred, not in surrender, but in defiance. The invaders had expected a planet of cowards or conquerors, of soldiers who would break and governments who would kneel. What they found instead was a species too stubborn, too wild, and too desperate to die quietly. As Ethan stared at the latest data flickering on the battered screens, alien communications scrambled, fragmented, he saw something else. Not anger. Of course. Here's Section 3, maintaining the same clear and focused narrative style, under 1,000 words, continuing naturally from the previous sections. The days that followed blurred into a grim procession of survival and retaliation. Earth's surface, once vibrant and teeming with life, now resembled a graveyard stitched together by the stubborn hands of those who refused to yield. In the ashes of old cities, scattered enclaves of resistance formed, led by those few who understood that victory would not come from strength alone, but from cunning and unpredictability. Ethan Ward, nursing a broken rib and a deeper exhaustion, coordinated efforts from a subterranean outpost buried beneath the Appalachian Mountains. The alien fleet's internal communication had splintered after the pulse attack. He analyzed the fragments ceaselessly, catching glimpses of strategies, shifts in command, even moments of hesitation. Somewhere in the void between human resilience and alien calculation, Ethan saw a weakness beginning to crack open. Captain Arya Solano had survived her desperate run on the command ship, though her bomber was lost and half her squadron vaporized. She limped into a new role, organizing guerrilla-style air assaults using whatever flying machines remained, from decrepit fighter jets to hastily armed cargo planes. Above the smoking ruins of Singapore, she led a suicide strike that brought down another alien frigate, proving that the invaders were not invincible after all. Meanwhile, Dr. Sanam Malik, her voice hoarse from sleepless nights and chemical fumes, refined a resonance weapon. The aliens adapted too fast. A static signal was useless now. They needed something dynamic, something alive. Working alongside ragtag teams of rogue scientists and hackers, she designed a living signal, an AI-infused frequency that evolved with every alien countermeasure. If it worked, it could unravel their entire technological network, like a virus eating through flesh. In the wastelands of Eastern Europe, Kira and Becky built alliances between human survivors and defected alien scouts, rare individuals captured during the initial strikes. Through crude communication, they learned that even among the invaders, there were divisions. Some had not agreed with the decision to exterminate humanity. Fear and dissent gnawed at the edges of their mighty fleet. Kira, wielding courage like a blade, proposed an unthinkable plan: infiltrate the enemy's primary command node, what humans had started calling the Mind Spire, and upload Sanaa's living virus directly into their core network. It would be a suicide mission, and it would need perfect timing, perfect chaos. The Mind Spire hung in low orbit above what was once Vancouver, a crystalline obelisk pulsing with alien intelligence. Defended by layers of dreadnoughts and a storm of automated drones, it seemed untouchable. Yet through the fragments Ethan intercepted, a vulnerability appeared, a maintenance window, brief and rare, when internal defenses would cycle down for recalibration. It was a sliver of a chance. President Morgan convened the surviving world leaders, those who could still be reached, through hastily rigged quantum relays. She laid out the plan with brutal honesty. "We will sacrifice everything if necessary," she said. "We stand on the edge of extinction, but this time we choose how we fall or how we rise." The resistance moved in the shadow of catastrophe. Solano's battered squadrons launched diversionary strikes across the globe, stretching the alien defenses thin. Ethan's team flooded enemy channels with false signals, creating phantom armies that danced across their sensors. Every skirmish, every feint was a desperate thread in a single, fragile tapestry. On a scavenged shuttle, barely space-worthy, Kira and a hand-picked team of soldiers, engineers, and alien defectors prepared for final assault. Clad in repurposed alien armor and carrying human-forged weapons, they braced themselves against the weight of the impossible. The launch was violent, slamming them against their seats as the jury-rigged engines roared. As they breached the upper atmosphere, the Earth shrank below them, a wounded, beautiful world hanging in the darkness. Kira kept her eyes locked on the Mind Spire, a beacon of cold, predatory light. Enemy drones converged almost immediately. Solano's air units scrambled to intercept, engaging in frantic dogfights across the burning skies. Explosions lit the heavens like desperate stars. The shuttle shook under impacts, alarms blaring, hull plates tearing away. Still, Kira pushed forward, gritting her teeth against the shrapnel slicing through the cabin. They were close. So close. Inside the Mind Spire, no one knew what awaited them. Sensors suggested an environment hostile to human life, saturated with alien technology. Survival wasn't expected, only success. As they pierced the Mind Spire's outer defenses in a suicidal dive, Ethan, watching through remote feeds, felt a gut-deep certainty. This was a fulcrum. This was the moment that would define whether Earth fell into eternal night or clawed its way back into the light. Kira's team crash-landed into the Mind Spire superstructure. They fought their way through gleaming corridors where gravity warped and time seemed to stutter. Alien constructs unfolded from the walls like living nightmares. Firefights erupted in the warped geometry, plasma bolts carving twisted shadows. Each loss was a stab to Kira's heart, but she pressed on, carrying the virus drive like a burning torch to the dying embers of her team. At last, she reached the core, a vast chamber pulsing with a terrible consciousness. The Mind Spire wasn't just technology. It was a mind vast and ancient, built on logic so cold it made Kira's blood run ice. For a heartbeat, it noticed her. A whisper brushed her mind, not words, but something worse, an invitation to surrender, to survive by becoming something less than human. Kira spat on the floor. She drove the virus drive into the terminal, fingers burning from the surge of alien energy. For a moment, the chamber screamed, a soundless, mind-breaking wail. And then the light began to dim. Far below, Ethan's monitors flared to life. Across the world, alien ships stuttered, faltered, and began falling from the skies like dying leviathans. Solano's pilots whooped in disbelief as enemy shields collapsed mid-battle. Dr. Sanam Malik wept openly as her monitors confirmed what her heart dared not hope. Humanity, broken and battered, had struck a mortal wound into the heart of its invader. Yet as the Mind Spire's final pulse trembled through the earth, something stirred in the deeper reaches of space. Ethan caught a faint new signal, distant, ancient, and coming closer. The war was not yet over. Of course. Here is Section 4, the final part of this arc. Tight, character-driven, and layered with sense of climax and lingering uncertainty, staying under 1,000 words. The silence that followed was unnatural. In cities where alien ships once blotted the sky, empty air hung heavy, pierced only by wind and the distant echo of collapsing ruins. Across the world, people emerged slowly from bunkers and rubble, blinking into a sky they had not seen in days. The invaders were gone or dying, their tower machines scattered across the landscape like the bones of fallen gods. But for those still alive, the war had not truly ended. The wreckage of victory demanded its price. Ethan stood inside what remained the command outpost, now half exposed to the elements, the roof peeled back by an earlier blast. His hands trembled as he examined the incoming signal. It pulsed faintly from deep space, different in tone, slower, more deliberate than any they'd encountered before. He knew with terrifying certainty that it was not a retreat signal. It was a summons. "What did we wake up?" he muttered, though no one was around to hear him. Far above the earth, orbiting silently, the remnants of the Mind Spire continued to burn. Inside its crumpled corridors, a body lay still. Kira and Becky's suit cracked and steaming. The core chamber had collapsed after the virus upload, and none had expected her to survive. Yet something stirred. A faint flicker in her visor. A heartbeat. She opened her eyes to a strange calm. The Mind Spire was no longer hostile. Its internal light no longer pulsed in menace, but in something else, curiosity. Where once the structure had been impossible to navigate, now pathways lit up softly before her, leading her deeper into its center. Back on Earth, President Morgan convened the largest broadcast since the invasion began, flanked by the surviving leaders of the shattered world. She spoke not with triumph, but clarity. "We are not alone," she said, "and we are not done." Captain Solano, grounded now with both legs in a brace, watched the speech from a field hospital outside Berlin. She didn't cheer. She simply exhaled. Around her, soldiers patched up with tape and morphine quietly nodded. Some battles ended with parades. This one ended with the slow realization that they were still alive. In Nairobi, Dr. Sanam Malik paced the edge of her lab, eyes locked on a monitor streaming the deep space transmission. It was a language, but one designed for something beyond human understanding. Not mathematics. Not threat. Memory. She leaned forward, adjusting the gain. It wasn't just a message. It was a record, a history. "They weren't the first," she whispered, "and we aren't the last." Kira moved to the heart of the Mind Spire alone, but not unobserved. She sensed it, a presence, a watching intelligence. Her translator implant struggled to keep up as fragments of alien thought flickered into her mind. Not words, not exactly, but impressions. "We were the children. We came before the storm." She stopped in the center of what must have been the true core. A sphere hovered silently before her, fractured and glowing faintly. It was not a weapon. It was a seed. Kira reached out, and this time the voice did not resist. It unfolded. An image of stars, of countless worlds, of civilizations reaching upward and vanishing in fire. The invaders had not been conquerors. They had been scouts, builders of bulwarks against something older, something hungry. As the images faded, Kira sank to one knee. She understood now. The fleet had not been here to rule. They had been trying to prepare the planet, shape it, harden it, for what was coming next. They had judged humanity unworthy. They had underestimated its chaos. She activated her emergency beacon. On Earth, Ethan caught the signal and bolted upright. "She's alive," he breathed. The transmission came with data, streaming schematics, coordinates, alien blueprints for technology never meant for human hands. President Morgan, informed of Kira's survival and the new data, issued immediate orders. "We don't have time to mourn. We have to rebuild. And we have to be ready." Under Sanaa's direction, teams across the globe began repurposing alien wreckage, energy systems, neural architecture, modular weaponry. What couldn't be understood was adapted. What couldn't be adapted was stored. The world that had existed before the invasion was gone. The nations that remained were scarred but united, not by choice, by necessity. In the coming months, skies once filled with terror began to hum with a different energy. Testing stations launched prototypes. Defense grids flickered into life. And beneath the surface, cities became fortresses. Solano returned to flight training, piloting hypercraft that sang with alien power. Ethan took command of a new observatory, now built in orbit. And Kira, once recovered, did not return to Earth. She stayed aboard the Mind Spire, now docked and dormant above the planet. Her body had changed, not physically, but something deeper. She no longer belonged only to Earth. She had touched something vast, and it had touched her back. In her final message before the Mind Spire slipped silently beyond the moon, she said only one thing: "Whatever's coming, I'll be waiting." And then she was gone. Earth stood quiet again, but every eye was now turned to the stars, and in the silence between heartbeats, humanity listened